Hi guys. Since my last, since the last time I've showed you some books, I've, taken on maybe 30 more. And I've bought them from two places, bookstores, and then there's this wonderful little thing that I've recently discovered in the basement of the Enchilada Red Public Library downtown, which is just 5 minutes down the road from me. I've been there before, but I just hadn't been in a few years. And what they do is they have a volunteer-run bookstore down there in the basement of the library. And they take out all of the books that are pulled out of circulation from the library, and they sell them down there from anywhere from a quarter to 50 cents to, on the higher end, might be $2 or $3 a piece. So I got a couple, like 15, of those books, and I have so many that I think I want to split this up into two pieces. The first one, what I'm going to call From the Bookstore, or something like that. I don't know. I'll decide that when I upload it. And then I'll call the second one From the Library Basement, or something. But I have gone through both piles and pulled out some guilty pleasure books, and I think I want to show you those first. The first one is called The Citadel. It's by A.J. Cronin. You might recognize the name and the title, maybe the author, from the PBS miniseries, or maybe it was just a movie that they did. It's about a Welsh doctor who has, in the course of his career, runs across, issues of medical ethics and how he thinks that the institution of medicine isn't serving patients as well as it possibly could. He wrote this in the 20s or 30s, and I just recognized the cover and the name and the title right away, so I picked it up. Guilty pleasure number 2 would be William Gibson, Spook Country. I hope this isn't a part of one of the trilogies that he did. I know there's Mona Lisa Overdrive and a few other novels. I don't know if this is standalone. The inside cover doesn't mention anything about a trilogy, but I should have looked that up. But of course, William Gibson is the father of sort of a certain kind of techie, sci-fi-ish novel that started to be written probably in the 80s. And I've never read anything remotely like this. I'm not really someone who gravitates to this kind of stuff, but he has quite a reputation as being a good writer, so I'm interested. This is someone you don't see mentioned or talked about a whole lot. His name is John Mortimer. And he wrote this series. It's actually a series of stories and novels. They're called The Rumples, or the Rumple series, or whatever. And it's about a judge named Rumple, his professional life being an English barrister, his private life, family, friends. They follow him all over the place. But actually, the writer who wrote the series, his name is John Mortimer. He was actually a barrister too. He passed away a few years ago, but he's the one who wrote all of these novels and stories. And I got 2 of them. I'm hiding one behind the other right now. This one is called Rumpole and the Pinge Bungalow Murders, or Pinja Bungalow Murders. And the other one is Rumpole and the Primrose Path. And my last guilty pleasure is P.D. James. This is The Private Patient. P.D. James's work has also been made into a number of PBS specials or movies. I have a couple of her novels, but haven't read any of them yet. So as for books that aren't guilty pleasures that I bought at the bookstore, not the library, those are these. So the first one is called Fin de siècle Vienna, Politics and Culture by Karl Schorsky. Karl Schorsky is a cultural historian and historian of ideas, an intellectual historian, and his specialty is turn of the century Vienna. And these are just some interlocking essays about music, psychoanalysis, how Vienna is laid out, the Ringstrasse, just a whole bunch of things that are really fascinating. Pre-World War I, Vienna is just a fascinating time and place full of neat ideas in music and art and culture. So next is a book by Elias Canetti, and it's Crowds and Power. Elias Canetti won the Nobel Prize in Literature way back, but this is actually not a novel. This is a study in, I guess you could call it, psychology and sociology. And it's actually about how crowds behave and basically crowd dynamics. I showed you another book by Canetti a while ago that I also found at a Friends of the Library book sale called Auto de Fe, but that's a novel, and this isn't, and I think both of these are out of print. So I got this too. And then I just found some really, really interesting books. George Kennan, Around the Cragged Hill, A Personal and Political Philosophy. George Kennan was the man who is pretty much responsible for he worked in the State Department for a long time in the 40s, 50s, 60s maybe. And he's pretty much single-handedly responsible for coming up with the containment of communism policy right after the war. And you might recognize his name, but of course everyone knows what the containment of communism is and how that functioned. But I've opened this book up, and he's a spectacular writer. I mean, just amazing writer, and also just extraordinarily smart. If I'm not mistaken, he lived to be about 100 years old and just died a few years ago. So he lived a very long, fascinating life, and I just happened across this on the discount shelf, of course, and I opened it up and read the first few pages, and I mean, it's just a great writer. I mean, just wonderful prose. So I picked it up. Plus, I'm also interested in what he thought about geopolitics in the 40s, 50s when he was in the State Department. The next book I found was about formerly Pope Benedict. It's called The Rule of Benedict. It's written by someone named David Gibson, who was a religion writer, and the back describes him as a religion writer and committed lay Catholic. So I guess a religious journalist. And the subtitle is Pope Benedict XVI and His Battle with the Modern World. So that looks like it could be interesting. Next is another book of religion. This is Alfred Guillaume's Islam. This was written in the 50s, but Alfred Guillaume was a professor at Princeton back then. So I thought that it might be a little old. I mean, it obviously won't give you reflections on post 9/11 America or anything like that. But I thought, for learning about the break between Shia and Sunni and Alawite and all of that good stuff, which most Americans don't really know or care about, it might be useful for that. Another book, novel by William Dean Howells. This is A Modern Instance. William Dean Howells was considered one of the best American novelists at the end of the 19th century. He wrote another novel, probably better known, called The Rise of Cyrus Lapham. Silas Lapham. Yeah, I think that's it. And but this is one I didn't have, so I picked this up. This one was another interesting find. This guy sort of writes about everything. I think he was a classics professor at Yale. It's called, the guy's name is Eric Havelock, and the book is called The Muse Learns to Write, Reflections on Orality and Literacy from Antiquity to the Present. So it's a tiny little thing, but it sounds sort of Walter Ong-ish, and it actually has a Walter Ong S.J. quote on the back. So anything that Walter Ong recommends, I love. A brand new copy, hardback, untouched and seemingly unread, of Roberto Bolaño's The Savage Detectives for $1. A book by Robert J. Lifton called The Nazi Doctors. The subtitle there, Medical Killing and the Psychology of Genocide. Michael J. Lifton is the go-to guy for the psychology and maybe even the psychiatry of genocide. Genocide, how it was how it was attempted to be sort of normalized into science during some of these regimes. And I think he's mostly known for doing work with, in the 30s and 40s, working with the 30s and 40s in Germany, but he's really a pretty well-known scholar within this area, so I picked this up. Next up is a tiny little book called Man and Nature in the Renaissance by Alan G. Debus. I have another book by Debus called The Chemical Philosophy, which is about the rise of chemistry in the 16th and 17th centuries, Robert Boyle and people like that, and how it slowly sort of separated from alchemy and became a science in and of itself. But this is about just specifically, or I should say more generally, science in the Renaissance. So, which is something I'm fascinated by and love to learn about. And last but not least, the last book review I posted on this channel was by an imprint called Triangle Classics. Well, there you can see there's that another Triangle Classics book. This one is called Before Night Falls, and it's by Ronaldo Arenas. And other than him being a Cuban gay writer, I really can't tell you that much. So I just saw this, and I guess I like these more than I don't like them. So I picked this one up too, and maybe I'll review that soon. Okay, so that's all of the books that I bought from the Bookstore. What I'll do next is put this one up, and then I'll show you all the books that I bought from the library basement.